It looks like, are you going to be? Uh, Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. My name is Doug Runke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Shaper, and that sunshine is sunshine that is here on the desert in between Palm Springs, California, and Phoenix, Arizona, as I head toward Phoenix today. So I apologize that I'm hopefully going to be available the entire 55 minutes of our conversation today because this is an important topic that we're talking about. First of all, at a macro level, leadership. And then one of the things that I love about our key speaker, Rutherford Pascal, today is not only his knowledge about leadership, but his ability to sustain the principles of leadership throughout every aspect of business. We've been largely talking about how a leader communicates to their own people to be able to get the most out of the company, the most satisfaction of the people, and the best results overall. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit of a different topic, and that is how does a leader interact outside the company? How should a leader present themselves, present their team, present their opportunity? And it came out of a conversation that Rutherford and I had about some pitch events that he's done. And, raise your hand if you've been to a pitch event where the person pitching did a bad job. And, it's not just the content and the approach of a pitch, but it's the presenting of the person as a leader. And can that leader present themselves in a way that best represents the company, best represents the opportunity in a way that people respond in a positive way? And so we decided we were going to talk a little bit about that today. And so, Rutherford, does that work for you? Did I capture it properly?
Yeah, and absolutely. So we're going to talk, and so I think about this, and I think you could think about this from a change management perspective, right? So if you're talking, about external, like you're outside the company, that's one way to think about this, right? But think about it also if you're pitching a new idea to executive leadership or a board or whatever. How do you sell your idea? How do you sell change, growth, to that team? And then secondarily, how do you sell that same growth, change to your team or to the greater team? So how do you sell to the leaders if you're an executive leader? How do you then sell it to the people, the boots on the ground? How do you sell those things? So it's a leadership skill that's extremely important, right? Because they're going to look at you in ways. So those are like the three frames: external, outside the company, right? How do you sell it? Internal, above the executive leadership or board, or your team leaders and the people who are boots on the ground, the change how does that you guys get that, understand? So Manal, first, yeah, I'm going to ask you first. So give me like a general overview when you hear that. Pick any one of those lanes and or all three and talk about how does a leader get people to buy on, follow to their ideas or leadership. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I really like how you framed that. As an aside, I always think that a company has three brands: the brand to the employee, the brand to their end client, and the brand to the investors. And in a way, this is like as a I'm going to say middle manager, you have that brand to the end client, you have the brand of your department to your senior management, and then you have the way you're presenting what the organization that brand is to your employees. And I'll start in a negative tone by saying I think one of the worst things that I see done is that when a leader is, yeah, on one hand, I mean, I'm criticizing someone for maybe their authentic feeling and or how they see the organization or the next change, but when they see it negatively already, so they kind of present it as, guess what, guys, look at those top management people who don't understand what we're really doing on the ground doing. So on one hand, they're close to their team. On the other hand, they're not really, I'll say, towing the party line in a way there I can see that it's being more authentic if you don't believe it. But I think that puts an organization in a very difficult place because if that manager leaves, you as an employee are like, where am I in this organization? I liked that boss, but now I don't feel connected at all with the agenda or the bigger picture of an organization. So I think it's a very important topic that you're bringing because as a middle manager, you really have to do a bit of both, you know? I
Hmm.
mean, have that sobriety of saying, okay, guys, I know it's the fifth time we're doing X, Y, and Z and it didn't work in the past. Because if you're not authentic, I mean, everybody's going to see that. On the other hand, if you're that negative about what's going on, it's really, um, yeah, I think it doesn't serve the end employee. Ooh, I hope you wanted me to share all of that.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Anne Marie, any thoughts? And I'll go to Michael.
Yeah, I totally agree, guys, with what you're both saying, but I think as well it has to be where you do show up authentically, and I think as a leader you have to be willing to do what you expect, employees to do and your team to do, and you have to show the same values that you expect of them in the way that you carry out your role.
Yeah, yeah. Michael?
I'm just enjoying listening to what everybody's saying because you're all saying some brilliant things. It's great to learn from you. To talk about external, internal, selling above and selling beyond, right? I think the first thing is meaning and purpose. That is the leadership's role. You must provide me. Crikey, everybody wants meaning and purpose right now. And in place of disruption and uncertainty, more than ever. So, meaning and purpose links to motivation, and you can do that at all three levels, right? Everybody wants that. The second thing, especially for your team, and sometimes what can happen in between levels is like silo culture, right? Team doesn't understand about this. So that understanding of interdependence, yeah, what you're doing affects this affects this, and we're all together. That can help remove that uncertainty and stop people feeling like they're isolated. And the third thing, which I think is crucial, is knowing what people care about, putting it in a language that they want. Maybe some people love to know benefits, return on investment. That's sales, isn't it? Do you know how to modify your language so that people go, she understands exactly where we're coming from? And I think to Anne-Marie's point about your leadership model, you have to have a model that's authentic for you. People can tell when you're faking it, and they can tell when you're being authentic. Equally, they can tell when you're new and inexperienced. That's fine. But for me, I use servant leadership. You can just what we're written down: situation adaptive leadership, hierarchical leadership. It depends on the country you're in, depends on the culture. But I think you need a model. Like this is the way I do it, and then those things can all include on that because the danger is if you don't have a model, you're just doing all these different things in different ways for different pitches and different situations. There's no cohesion, and people can tell when there's no cohesion. So yeah, thank you for everybody for your thoughts. This is great.
So let me ask a follow-up question slightly differently. So what if you're presenting to um, you and executive leadership have come to an agreement. We're gonna make this change. We're moving the company in this direction. So there's a complete alignment with all the leaders, and it still fails. It fails. The initiative, the move, after 6, 9, 12 months, nothing has changed. Tell me what happened. Tell me the first thing in your mind, why did it fail? And then what should have been done to make it successful? Let me start with Anne Marie first, and then we'll move on.
Why did it fail? Well, it can be down to something as simple as the way it was communicated. But one of the things I see in teams that I work with, where there's maybe a lack of trust and a fear of conflict, people don't challenge and they don't participate in a way that might actually allow the team to function better or to get the result better. Sometimes it's actually about getting the feedback from the team in a way that where you're not defending the action that you're trying to take. So it
Hmm.
doesn't create that conflict and maybe which can then lead to a lack of trust. That's certainly something I see in a lot of the leadership trainings that I do in terms of feedback that I get before and after a training.
Hmm. Manal?
Yeah, I really, Anne Marie really said it right. That I mean, it could be. I mean, you're in this theoretical. I was like, oh, it could be a product issue. It could be a people issue. It could be I think that it can be depending on what type of initiative you're talking about. It really could be a few buckets that it falls under. Um, but maybe then, I mean, who hasn't failed at something, right? I mean, as a person, as an organization, I think the important thing is like, okay, how do you get yourself back on the right track as an organization? Do you take time to figure out what didn't work? Um, let's say in a worst case, it's just let's hire new management, do something that was done about a decade ago that the current people don't remember, right? And because many are like when we talk about restructuring, one of the things I see is you go centralized, then you go in the regions, then you bring it back and you go back and forth and back and forth. And if there was somebody there long enough, they would say, wow, we've been kind of cycling through these two ideas in a way, right? And neither one is working. So I think when something fails, it's important if you have the culture to say, let's figure out why, not from a blame perspective, but how can we do it differently and better next time? And I think that's kind of all of us in whatever we're doing, right?
Hmm. Mr. Quigley?
It's funny. It's about 5 years ago. I made a podcast on exactly this thing, which was, what was it? How to get people to change when they don't want to. Because the feedback I'd been getting is, and it's true, and hopefully you agree, it's one thing in a boardroom to agree a change is needed. It's another thing for everybody else who doesn't know about that decision and is not expecting that decision and probably doesn't even want that decision. And it's back to, like I said before, you got to get their buy-in. You know why it's going to be good. You've seen improve. You've probably thought about it 50 times. But that group's the first time they've ever heard it. And often when we're expected people to make change at a workplace, it's under pressure. They haven't got a week to go and think about it, you know? It's like, okay, we're going to do this thing, we're rolling it out next week. A really good strategy for that was John C. Maxwell. I think you'll know Rutherford. He has like 5 levels, right? His first level is, oh, we're doing this thing. Do I need to do anything? No, no, just telling you. Right. And the next time we're doing this thing. Do I need to do anything? No, no, no. Just maybe make a note of this thing or read this document. And you go through like 5 levels. And by the fifth time, they're like, we're ready. Come on. And it's that, poco poco, slowly, slowly. In terms of how to improve, then, I'm actually re-listening to an audiobook called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. It's really good. I'd recommend it. And he talks about attitudes, and Anne Marie knows a lot more about this than I do. But the difference between attitudes in healthcare and aviation to failure. And in both cases, if it goes wrong and changes wrong, people die, right? And they're saying in healthcare, they tend to say things like, it was one of those things, couldn't be helped, right? But in aviation, they were a lot more like, no, why? We're going to really drill down into the why because we can't be having this. So it's not a blame thing. It was just two different approaches. And it's like Manal was saying, sometimes things go wrong. We take it personally. It's my project. It failed. It's my team. And what Matthew's suggesting is if you can let go of that for a minute, which is hard, and look at it and be open to other people looking at it and be a bit more forensic about it, you'll probably come to a really good insight. But that's hard because we're emotional beings. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, so the way I think about this is, and I listen, I agree with everybody, is commitment at the top, excuse me, alignment at the top is paramount. You need alignment at the top, but it's just not enough, right? Just because people in the boardroom and the leadership team, the executive suite, they agree, and then like Henry said earlier, then you got to communicate it. then you have to embody it. Then you have to then they have to see it, right? They have to see, oh, this is real. These people are acting. One of the things that I love this comment that things are caught, not taught, right? So when they see you, and this is for me parenting, right? I always tell people, you know, the words I say are one thing, the actions that behind those words are way more important. Because 99% of the time, I have four kids, and I think none of them are listening to me. Like they didn't hear anything I said. It's, they're going to be terrible adults. I was a terrible parent, and then somehow, like somehow, some of the things not because of what I said, actually, it was some of the actions that they saw, right? And it's similar to a leadership team and a culture. If they see the leaders behaving in a certain way and what they're saying about this initiative or this thing that they're trying to change, and then they're mirroring it, and then they're acting as such, right? In a prolonged then it starts becoming embedded into the organization. So it takes a while. It's not very short, right? So it's good to have alignment, but then you need commitment, right? You need commitment from the team, and you know that's what's difficult. It's that commitment, right? From everybody else. And so anyway, so that's my thought on it. Any follow-up comments before I ask the next question? Doug, are you still in the car? Are you still there? I don't see you on my screen. You don't, I mean, you don't have
Yeah,
to
I'm here. I'm listening. I'm learning.
Okay, you're listening. Uh,
And
so let me ask you this question, next question. So people want when they talk about change, right? They want to drive change quickly. You always hear that. We have to drive change quickly. What's the biggest mistake about driving change quickly? Mike, you want to start?
Yeah. Well, there's so many that I've made and seen people make. I think one, to be honest, especially on global business, I've realized is not knowing what's already been done before. Like there's that phrase in English, I don't know if you know, it says every generation thinks they invented sex, right? Every generation thinks they're the first person to have ever done this, ever had that thought. And it's like maybe there are a few thousand people before that maybe had similar experiences. So, doing your due diligence, like
Yeah,
Mal was saying, maybe this was done 10 years ago.
yeah,
And maybe it was done well. And so just thinking in a box, in a vacuum, going, but it's different because it's me and I'm going to make it happen. I think that's something that we can all kind of fall into maybe to try and avoid.
yeah. Emery?
Yeah, I love what Michael said about John C. Maxwell's The Five Layers. Bob Proctor used to have a great saying that I used to love, and he used to say, "Forget this resistance to change. People don't resist change; they resist being changed." I used to think it was brilliant, and he was so, energetic on the stage when he'd say it. But in actual fact, it's true. So if you spend the time preparing the communication and getting the buy-in and explaining maybe why, and even to highlight that this is something we're going to try and it may not necessarily work, get the employees' thoughts, get the team's thoughts. It just helps with them feeling they're part of the decisions, which
Mhm.
I think will reduce the risk of the resistance. That
Manal?
would that would be my kind of thought on it.
Very so Rutherford, I wasn't expecting that. I thought I was just gonna sit back, have fun.
No, 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 no. This is communal. This is a communal thing, right?
Yeah, about the you started with saying people always want to go fast.
Yeah.
And it reminded me, I recently learned that when you want to learn how to ski, they say you have to go slow to go fast. Because if you go slow, you're going to learn how, and then you're going to be able to go fast. So I think there's a huge merit in um, going slow to go fast. So to it's worth putting all of the foundation in, whether it's talking about getting people to understand why you're doing it, or how's the process going to go, or how it's going to impact them. That all feels like, yeah, slowing us down.
Mm.
But yeah, the knock on is, I think, that you do go faster if you go slower.
Yeah, it's funny because there's this principle or thing called the luck. Is it Luckman or something like that? It's forming, storming, norming, and performing. What's that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's late. And so, and when we talked about driving change quickly, it's it doesn't happen. Like it doesn't happen. It's you can't drive change quickly. First of all, human beings hate change. And Emery, what you said, that's exactly that's exactly right. It takes a while. So I'll give you a couple of things. So you guys have Chick-fil-A, Michael and in England?
I know what it is, yeah. I
You,
don't
you, you,
personally eat it, but like I know what it
but
is.
you know what it is, right? You guys, Emery, you know what it is. Manal, you know what Chick-fil-A is. So it's like the fastest growing chain in the United States. I don't know, it could be the world, whatever. So they actually make more money per square foot than like three times more than any other food chain, right? So the founder of Chick-fil-A was staying at the Ritz-Carlton, and when the Ritz-Carlton did something for them, and the owners said, "Hey, thank you," they would say, "It was my pleasure." And Dan Cathy they loved that. I'm gonna bring that to Chick-fil-A. So they did. They brought that to Chick-fil-A. And if you know anything about the culture, so they're very, I mean, they did everything they could to bring this to culture, to this just saying was my pleasure. It took them 3 years to embed it in their organization. 3 years, because these things take time. They you you're driving change, but you should be. It's the wrong thing to drive. By the way, it's better to lead change, right? It's just even the word is wrong, right? It's we need to lead change, and that leadership just takes a while, right? Again, it's got to be part of the DNA of the organization, and people have to see it. The culture is what you accept, what you don't accept, what you don't do all the time. And it takes time for everybody to build that. And I think about that because I heard that the first time I heard that, I went, that's why these things fail. Let me give you another story. This is a real life situation. So I had just we just created another sales force for my when I was in corporate America, and I told them that this sales team will increase our numbers by 15, 20%, whatever the number was. And the leadership asked me, um, how long will it take for us to see this benefit because we're spending money on this? And I said, it's going to take 5 months. You're not going to see any, because then again with Tuckman storming, and they're like 5 months, like they, it it was it was like you can't. Can we what can you demonstrate something in a month so we know it's working? And the answer was no. I can't give you anything in a month. Like change does not have, and so I got, raked over the coals for the next 4 or 5 months, making sure like they're asking me, it's not working, we're gonna cancel it. We're gonna literally month five that you could start it hit started seeing and turn the corner and it just did well after that. But I remember that so well because they was like August, you're gonna see numbers. You're gonna see it. You're gonna see it. You're gonna see it. So I had to sell that to them over time and time again to be patient, trust. It's gonna happen, but it's going to happen when, the not only do the does the organization have to absorb it, the customers now have to absorb this change. So it's not like it's not microwave. I can't put this oatmeal in the microwave and 3 minutes later I can eat it. It just takes a lot longer time, right? So anyway, any follow-up thoughts? Anybody else? Anything else on that? Doug, you want to jump in? Are you good? I can ask another question. Just just making sure Doug's not sleeping when he's driving. You still there, Doug? I'll just um, let me ask a question about resisting change. Why do teams resist change? Why do you see teams just resist change? Emery?
I think there's an element of it, Rutherford, where, our behavior is so habitual. And when we're in habitual behavior, we're in our comfort zone. And that's our subconscious mind doing exactly what it's designed to do, keep us there, keep us safe, keep us protected. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think that comes back to, not enforcing change. As you say, it's about leading change and it's about getting the feedback from the employees, getting their opinion, getting their buy-in, helping them see the benefit. I think I think it comes down to something maybe even as simple as that, where we're just habitual creatures. Um, and our comfort zone loves that. So when we have to get out of that or stretch or learn something new, I mean, for me, COVID was such an eye opener there. I mean, I did nothing online before COVID. So COVID has literally changed my business. It has changed my quality of life. But I would have used the excuse before because I've been in so many US groups, coaching groups and things, and I would have used oh no, in Ireland, no, we do everything face to face. And I would have had people say, so you mean you drive 3 hours to meet a prospect? Like they thought I was nuts. I'd say they were actually wondering, how is this woman even in business? But that was my protective, what would you call it, technology barrier. I've always had a bit of a tech phobia. Um, so COVID was literally the pressure cooker for me. The lid came off and I had to run with it. But that's the example I would use even for me personally. And I probably see that in a lot of teams where I do coaching as well, particularly when I'm coaching individuals. It's just that habitual, why would we change it? And it's working fine the way it is. And, it's going to require a lot more of me if this change is enforced on me.
Can I ask you a follow-up question on the coaching? Because I think all of us do that, and it would be good to hear from. So you're working with a client, and you've given them specific tasks to do. They're doing it, but they don't see. So how long do you see in some of your clients, does it take to change where they are like, wow, this is working?
I think a minimum of 3 months, where I could be sitting down with someone weekly for 3 months. Before this, you actually start to get them to change whatever the paradigm is, controlling the behavior and creating the habits. So, we are what we repeatedly do. I love that saying. And what we repeatedly do becomes so habitual. So, I often use the example to people where I would say, did you get up this morning and question if you'd brush your teeth? Did you think, oh, I won't run a toothbrush and bristles over my teeth. I won't put toothpaste. I won't put water on the toothbrush. And the answer is always no for me to date. And I think that's just, we do it without any conscious thought. And I think with change, when it's been implemented, there is that fear that it's bringing us out of habit and it's going to require us to step up. And I again go back to my own experience with COVID. It really required me to step up and look at, okay, where is my thinking on this whole technology piece coming from? And this could change my business. So where is it worth it for me to buy in? And what's the emotion behind my fear? And the emotion was looking stupid, on in relation to the technology. The first webinar I ran, I shut the meeting down instead of putting people into a breakout room. I mean, that's the level you were dealing with for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And a friend of mine was on the webinar who's done online stuff for years, long before COVID. And she rang me and said, look, this is fine. You're probably bricking it. Just go back into the meeting. Everybody's been really understanding. So maybe there was a comfort for me in the pandemic where we all had an understanding of each other's learning. And I think maybe that's where the fear as well maybe comes from outside of a situation where we don't have that. Will I look stupid? Will I be judged? Will I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about? What if I'm not able? And that's just our negativity bias that
Mm,
where we question ourselves. But
that's
yeah, I shut the
awesome.
webinar down.
That is fear. That is fear for sure. Manal,
Um, do you maybe remember a company called webvan.com?
webvan. Yep. Yep.
Okay. So it failed and it was doing something as crazy as they was going to deliver groceries. And why did it fail, right? And it was actually in Silicon Valley. So bunch of tech people, and yet it still failed. And all it was doing was bringing groceries, but it was such a change in behavior for people. I mean, today, who hasn't had something delivered? I mean, that's just so normal for us, right? But this was like 20 some years ago. And it was, uh, I think that what you're asking is like, I think without having thought a lot about the topic, I can just say, I think there's two things that make us and people not want to change. One is we get into our comfort zone of how I do things and how I do it already works. So why are we changing this? And then the other side is presenting what is the benefit of the change. And I think when people understand that, then the hurdle, to make the change becomes easier. And so I think you really need to, like with you, when you were talking about, you were telling your management that there was going to be a financial benefit to the fact that you were investing, right? And you have to keep that in focus that we're not just doing this because Rutherford has nothing to do in the next 6 months, so he's going to implement this change, right? So it's really staying focused on the benefit while giving people time to make the change and understanding why they're doing it. Because I think, yeah, most of us, we don't want to do things differently because, we've
Mhm.
already thought about how we want to do it.
Mark.
I've written a few things that can hopefully help if people watching this saying I've got people, resistant. I think the first things, oh, by the way, Marie is right. 3 months is a really good time for human behavior change. When I do with clients and like, how do I work with you? It's like, is it a month? Is it a year? I'm like, try 3 months. And usually by that point, they've either got what they came for or they want to carry on. So 3 months is really good. The first thing is to be aware of context. You see people for maybe, I don't know, 20 to 60 hours a week, but you don't know what they've got going on in their life. You don't know what's going on outside of work. Like, we all had the grand narrative of COVID. That was like a context we're all involved in. So sometimes it's nothing to do with you. It could just be that the mother's just died. So paying attention to context and think about different times of context is really important. The second thing is picking up on what you said before, Rutherford, about with children, because I used to be a teacher, well, still kind of am. And we used to talk about there's two types of curriculum, right? So your curriculum is this body of knowledge that you're trying to pass on or you want them to learn and you write it down, maths, English, science, languages, whatever. And every teacher does that, right? You don't just make it up. And there's pressure to deliver that within a term, within a year, right? But we used to also say there's a second curriculum, or we used to call it a shadow curriculum, which is all the stuff that's not on the curriculum, but they'll pick up just by going to this school, right? Like the way to dress or the way we address our teachers or all these things. And some can be really good, but some can be really bad as well. So that can happen with an organization as well. You can have this like shadow side to the organization where, and I've seen this, I'm sure we've all seen this with these companies. They're really good. You go in and spend time with them, you're like, wow, they've got something going on there. I think the third aspect, which is a very hot topic in terms of AI, is AI has changed what Rutherford you were saying before about the time thing for change, right? So no longer do you have to load up a computer game and go make a cup of coffee while you're waiting for it to load, right? Unless it's a new game. Things are virtually instantaneous. So the danger with that is that makes us treat ourselves like machines. That's a very, very dangerous expectation to have in terms of change management. I'll give an example. I had a client and she was trying to reflect on, like Anne-Marie was saying, a period of time. I was like, what do you feel you've learned? How have you improved? And she went, "Ooh," and she struggled. And I just stopped her and said, I don't expect some perfect list, right? I don't want like 15 bullet points out the top of your head. You're not ChatGPT. And she relaxed. And then like I led her through. I just asked some questions and wrote them down. And she came up with like 15 things in 10 minutes because I gave her a bit of space, rather than just saying, I expect this straight away. And the final thing, which I think as leaders, we have to be really honest with ourselves is by what authority can you expect to change? Do you have positional authority? Are you the boss? Are you the manager? Are you the parent? Fine. But do you have moral authority? And I really struggle with that in my early days as a teacher, meaning like you have both positional authority, right? You are the teacher, but you have this moral aspect to it, which is you're supposed to do the right thing, and they learn from you because they kind of like you. And I've realized that in certain situations you have neither, and you have to be very aware of that. I think the danger we can make is if you're a leader in your organization or you're a business coach, you're a manager, you're just another person in Chick-fil-A in the queue. You have no position or moral authority whatsoever. And that's something I'm always very, very careful about is knowing when you have the authority to influence change or lead change and when you don't. And most of the time, actually, you don't, and I think that's something that I think we should all just be humble with, you know, because I don't want you to make the mistake I've made in the past. I once tried to tell my brother what to do. And he's like, don't use your teaching voice on me. That's like 15 years ago. But that was a failure that I made by not reading the room, the context. I had no moral or positional authority. Okay. But then in the classroom, I had one girl look at me like that. She was like, you know everything. And that's the other end of the scale. And you've got to be, you've got to say, no, I don't, and say,
Yeah.
I'm a human being, just like you. Um, and also, Anne-Marie, in one of my biggest webinars during COVID, I said, I'll just open the chat box and I log myself out. And you just see this horrible buffering, emoji, and then log myself straight back in, and they weren't bothered. But my heart was like going like that. So you were not alone.
By the way, that COVID, I use COVID all the time as far as the people change and when, so many companies during COVID, well, before COVID, said they wanted to change something with their company. And the consensus was, oh, it's going to take a year. We're going to do that, but it's going to take a year to do it. And then literally it took 3 weeks to do it because, and really, to me, that's really what the change and resistance, because there's so when people resist change, there's an intellectual thing that people understand that there might need for change. Then Henry mentioned this word. Then there's this emotional thing that I don't know if I can go through it, and I don't know if I want to change, right? And it's going to affect me, even though I know it's the right thing to do. I don't want to go. So it's from when people resist from an emotional perspective. Intellectually, if you sell it right, they most people will understand. If you sell it right, they'll understand. Okay, I get why they want us to change the future. Why, AI, Michael mentioned it, AI. I understand it. I have to learn AI. It's a huge change for me. I'm not somebody that likes, dealing with this stuff. But I know if I don't change, I'm going to be left behind. So, but it's an emotional thing, right? And I'm not good with it. So you have to, as leaders, I think one of the things you have to do is understand everybody's different in their change journey. And for those people who are slower, and I think you just have to continue to support and like anything else, pat them on the back or let them know that they're doing it, continue to push them, but not like there's no urgency, because if you do that, they will crash, right? They will continue to resist. But when they see success, when they see the impact of whatever change they're doing, they're more than likely going to do it again. They're going to, but it's a very, very difficult thing because people do not they like the result of change. But by the way, here's the other thing. They like when other people change. They want to change other people, but they don't they're changing themselves is difficult. Mohammed, question.
Hi, Pascal. How are you doing?
That's spectacular. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to join, and I was enjoying listening to you all. And thank you for a great information. I just wanted to answer your question when people are difficult to change. I can give it my father's example. If you are successful for a decade and you see the world is changing, it's difficult for him to change because he was already successful. Why I need to change? I already got what I got today, so at least you have to see the whole environment around you are changing will be enough for you to start considering. And this is one of the difficult point for, especially business-wise. People are resisting change. For example, Nokia, the phone company, the world leader, and you see your competitors comes and passes, and still uh, it's crazy when you think about it, but they were the world leader of mobile phone. Who is Apple or Samsung coming and teach them how to sell phones? So I think this is one of the points that when a habit of your business habits are successful, and even changing habits for human beings are uh, difficult uh, to change. So this is what I wanted to add. So thank you again and happy birthday, Doug. I don't know. I'm not sure if this is your birthday, but I just wanted to show my face and thank you all. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mohammed. And it's funny because you say Nokia on the phone biz. I think of BlackBerry. Because so BlackBerry was like this spectacular. That's a great example because Nokia, BlackBerry, they were owning the phone market, and everybody had and BlackBerry had this thing where still they were they and they these CEOs, they're co-CEOs in Canada, and they saw this new phone come out, and it had a camera and apps. And they're like, no keyboard. Because no keyboard? Why do I need a camera on a phone? Why do I need apps? I don't get that. And so, by the way, there's no viruses. The one thing with BlackBerry is no virus. There's zero virus. So famously, the president of the United States was one of the last people to get rid of his BlackBerry. President Obama at the time was one. He probably I think 99% of the world got rid of BlackBerry, and he change. Like he he resisted change, but it's a great point. It's a great point. So thanks Mohammed for that. Um, Let me ask one more question, and then I'll get Doug in here to close us out if he's still. Um, so how do you? Let me. So there's a difference between commitment and compliance, right? When people they comply with you for change, and so talk to me. How do you get teams to move just from being compliant to being committed? You guys get that? And that change? Michael, let me start with you.
Yeah, I've literally seen an example of this today on LinkedIn. So,
Oh, you did?
yeah, Russell Bedford International, I think member of Global Chamber, they have a great company in Malaysia, and they're doing their ESG, and they did a post about it, and they had a commitment board, They literally made a physical board and everybody put a pledge on it. They wrote a physical thing, pledge, and they put the pledge up. Everybody can see it. It's public. We are pledging, going to make this commitment. So use that as an example. I have a model for motivation called the 5 types of motivation, which is answering this: how do you get them to change, basically? Or how do you get yourself to change consistently? And one of the key points I can tell you is, having taught a lot of people, including myself, like how to consistently stay motivated and commit and recommit over a period of years, is that all motivation actually starts externally. You go to school, you get your certificates, your stickers, your sweets, whatever, you pass your exams, you get this external environment. And it's very true. You take it in, trust me. You take it in, you take it in, you take in what the teacher says to you, all these things, and you absorb it. So this motivation, or this, this commitment, is external, because you've seen when people change schools or they change jobs, it has a negative or positive impact on them. And what I always say is, but there reaches a point where they've taken in enough to not need that anymore. And it's what's called strong intrinsic motivation or internal motivation. So I can tell Rutherford does not need external motivation. He's got his pictures and he's got his things that will probably help him. But what I call the fire is lit, And I think a lot of people on this call are the same. And once you get that lit inner fire, that inner commitment, that internal motivation, you will not have to worry about commitment. Because they'll be saying to you things like, I don't need that anymore. No, we're all good. We're all good. We're all good. And I've done this with children as young as 5. I've done this with adults. People say, how long does it take? It's down to how much effort you make. I've built relationships with people over a weekend. I know other people I've known for decades, and you only get compliance from them, as it were. So what I'd say is, remember that when it comes to commitment versus compliance, you're on a journey from external to internal. Most people that I speak to, leaders, they're like, why aren't my people getting it? I'm like, because you're expecting them to be strongly internally motivated like you are. This is your business. You've got skin in the game. This is a job for them. It's not the same commitment. Oh, okay. So recognizing it starts from external, moves to internal, and then it becomes just a bit of fun. And like Rutherford was saying, every bit of encouragement, they're taking it in, they're taking it in, they're taking it, and eventually like, yep, I'm good, thanks. You know, and they'll tell you. And it's really cool when they get to that point, because you're just like, oh wow, this is amazing. So yeah, starts externally, moves internally, starts with kind of complying, and then eventually becomes, commitment coming from them, and you won't have to keep asking them for it. So
Michael, you have any like thoughts on specific steps that a leader could take to, in general, to take from getting somebody to come from compliance to
yeah,
commitment?
sure. Yeah. The first thing I always do with people is I got this from an English British athletics coach, Daley Thompson's coach in the 80s. I think it's Frank Dick was his name. And the first thing he does with any new athlete, he goes, right, show me your best move. Like, show me your 200 meters, show me a javelin, show me whatever. And he would get the athlete to perform what they're really good at. And this journalist said, like, why are you just getting him to do what he's already good at? You're here to make him better. He said, I want my athletes feeling confident. I want them feeling good. So I would start by finding out what is something they're committed to. Could be outside of work. There could be a gamer on Twitch. It doesn't matter. Because what you're doing there is you're identifying what's a success reference point in their brain. What's something they can do to a high standard, and they feel like I'm competent at this. I'm good. This is my thing. Maybe they speak a language or whatever, and you go great. And so you speak to them saying, you can do that. Tell me about how you got so good at that. Tell me about why you like that so much. Tell me about that. And you're doing all the things, ticking the boxes: personalized, autonomy, freedom of choice. And they're just talking to me about my favorite stuff. And yeah, great. Put that into that. And they'll be like, oh, I never thought of it like that. So like you say, and the alternative is you just start by saying, I need you to do this, I need you to do this, I need you to do this. And they're like, by what reference point? But you say, I need you smashing those sales targets just like you did your streaming last night on YouTube that I watched. I'm like, oh, I got it. It's what I call a success reference point. They're like, okay, if I can do that, I can do this. And everybody's got a success reference point, even if it's just speaking a language. So I'd start with that, right? Obviously, you could do more formal things, structures and teams, but I found that one's very informal, doesn't take long, and it switches the emphasis onto them. So already you're coaching them to be like, you take responsibility. You tell me what you're good at. You tell me why, right? I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not here to create a need to be needed. So that's just the first one kind of coming to mind. I'm aware, obviously, I want to hear from everybody else.
No?
Michael, you said so many smart things. I don't want to follow you. Um, so first, I was just having this conversation with somebody about commitment and motivation. So, and I know you didn't ask about motivation. You were asking about whether someone is compliant or not, which makes me always remember the follow the letter of the law versus the letter of the spirit, right? But first, going with the commitment versus motivation, I always think like for my business, I'm not running on motivation because motivation is extremely fleeting and I do things in the middle of the night. And sometimes I say to somebody, especially when they have a child, you're also not running on motivation. Most parents aren't, because if your child cries at night, you don't wake up and ask yourself, as uh, do I feel motivated, as Anthony Robbins would say, to get up and go take care of my child? No, you do it because you are sincerely committed to the well-being of your child. Now, to transfer that as leadership and in an organization, um, I have seen this over and over again. We organizations talk about that, right? What we put on our walls, websites, annual reports. But actually, every one of us already has values. And I think that when someone comes into an organization and their key values are being delivered on, as in if they have a sense of meaning is important for them and your organization does something that they believe in, they're going to have that commitment to the organization. And the more you stack the things that are of value and in line with the values of your employees, the more they're going to be committed to the organization. I don't know if that is clear the way I've said it, because it's, you know, talking kind of all over the place. But just to say, it starts by understanding what is important for that individual. Maybe like Michael said, if winning in a certain context is important for them, then if you're in a winning team, for someone else it might be what we're delivering for the client is meaningful for that person. So I think something needs to resonate, what they do there every single day, that needs to resonate with what they value. And when that happens, that's when you have commitment, because it's juicing them up. Hopefully.
Henry?
Yeah, I guess definitely what they're saying, what you're both saying on motivation is so, it's so important. And I know traditionally it used to be, is it a toward or an away from motivation? And, away from motivation was seen as something very negative. But I think when you can tap into the emotional state of the people that you're trying to implement the change with, sometimes the away from pain actually can be a driver that's positive for them. So I guess for leaders, it's about looking at my narrative is my motivation towards a goal to take me away from pain and towards pleasure, or what's the motivation for me, but it doesn't make it right for everybody else.
Mhm.
So I think looking at the emotional state of the team and the fears in the team, and this is really where I think vulnerability is something that's really, really critical. When I expanded my first business, the healthcare business, and I grew by acquisition. So I suddenly went from having a team of 3 to a team of 8. And, I didn't have a clue how I was going to manage a team of 8. I'd managed people at a lower junior level before. And I remember one of the first things I did was I just called out that vulnerability. And I said, guys, I've never acquired a business before. I have 2 teams and I want this to work, but I'm going to need you to help me because some of you know aspects of the newer business and I don't. And I know myself and the current team know aspects of the older business that you don't. So, but I think it was nearly calling it out and normalizing it. Because I know my clinical nurse manager, she said that when I sold, she said, you normalized the vulnerability and that made you a bit human. You weren't coming in saying employee health have to do it the way health force did it, or health force have to do it the way employee health did it. So, but but I think the motivation, what is the motivation behind what you're doing? But I think the vulnerability and the emotion behind what people are resisting is also really important to drill down into.
Okay. All right. So just last word on it, and I'll give it the rest to Doug. So just if I think about compliance is really what we have to do, right? And commitment is what we believe in. So to Michael's point, it's a step, and everybody's going to get there at different times. And for me, how do you get people there is by just celebrating the small wins of going there. Success breeds success. And then you want to do something, because you hear a lot of people when they first introduced this to me, I hated it, I didn't want to do it. And then I did it. Oh my God, I got so much success. I love and it becomes committed, and it just takes time. It takes effort from a leader to recognize that it's going to take time, and it's good, and that time frame is going to be different individually. And you're not saying, "Hey, we need to get everybody committed in 3 months." It- okay, that is not going to happen. So change is very difficult. It just takes time, it takes patience, but it's understanding to get from what Anne Marie said all the way at the beginning, 45, 50 minutes ago, was that communication is so key to making this and constant communication throughout this. So I'm going to leave it there. Doug, you have the last 4 minutes or 3 minutes.
Appreciate it. And Jem, could you put the next event that we have? I think it's the sales meeting. Excuse me, global sales. That's starting in a few minutes. I love this conversation, and thank you for the recognition of my birthday today. I think of birthdays as birthdays that relate to what was discussed, that we love change as long as someone else does it. A birthday is a big change. When you're actually originally born, that's a big, big transition. You got to adjust, and that's what I view today, not just for me, but for all of us. Every day is an opportunity to be reborn, to change our behavior. And as leaders, I kind of think that's almost essential because the world is changing, people are changing, people around us on our teams are different and have issues in their lives that matter to them and so matter to us. And so thank you all leaders, all of you for speaking today and giving us a little bit more help so that we consider tomorrow as our birthday and that we'll be more amenable to change. Thanks, everybody.
That was great, Doug. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Doug.
Happy birthday, old man.
Happy birthday to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Bye.